Your blood is a risk. We won't carry your curse. Those were the last words my mate spoke before he severed our bond, leaving me standing in a circle of silence. They didn't just reject me, they labelled me. To the pack, my blood was a sickness, a curse, whispered about by elders and feared by warriors. They watched with visible relief as I was cast out, believing they were finally purging the darkness from their ranks. They were wrong. My blood wasn't a curse. It was a secret. I accepted the exile they called mercy, walking into the wilderness with nothing but the burning ache of a broken bond. But where my pack saw a liability, the Alpha King saw a legacy. He didn't find a broken Omega hiding from her past. He found the one bloodline the world had spent centuries trying to erase. He didn't come to save me from my curse. He came to kneel before it. If you've ever been rejected for something you never chose, if you've been made to feel like your very existence is a mistake, stay with me. Because the people who threw me away are about to realize that the curse they feared was the only thing keeping them safe. And when blood remembers what the world tried to forget, not even an Alpha King can stop the reckoning that follows. If this moment resonates, leave a comment and subscribe to follow what happens when blood remembers what the world tried to forget. Among the Eastern packs, bloodlines mattered more than loyalty. Ancient records were guarded like weapons, and ancestry determined worth long before choice ever had a chance. Wolves born with irregular markers, unusual scents, unstable bonds, untraceable lineage were watched closely, tested harshly, and judged early. She had failed those judgments before she could understand them. Her blood did not behave the way it was supposed to. It resisted classification, refused to settle into known patterns, and reacted strangely beneath the moon. Elders called it instability. Healers whispered of contamination. The pack settled on a safer word: cursed. Her parents had paid for it first, ostracized, weakened, and quietly removed from influence. By the time she came of age, the stain had already been set. When her mate bond manifested, the pack panicked. Bonds were meant to reinforce order, to align bloodlines and secure alliances. Hers did the opposite, unsettling hierarchies, stirring unease, making elders nervous in ways they refused to explain. So when pressure mounted, when fear outweighed tradition, the decision was swift. Reject her, contain the risk, erase the anomaly. The Alpha King had not been present that night. He ruled from the high seat, distant from pack rituals and daily judgments, trusting councils to preserve balance while he dealt with wars, borders, and treaties that shaped the realm. By the time rumors of the rejection reached him, the pack believed the matter settled. They were wrong, because blood carries memory, and some truths wait patiently, buried beneath lies, until power finally looks closely enough to recognize what it's been standing on. Exile was quieter than she expected. No escort, no ceremony. Just a narrow path beyond the boundary stones and the unspoken understanding that she was not to be followed. The pack watched from a distance as she walked away, their relief almost tangible in the thinning air. She did not look back. The forest received her without judgment, shadows folding around her steps as twilight deepened. Her scent lingered oddly, neither fading nor sharpening, confusing her instincts in a way that made her chest tighten. The mate bond lay dormant inside her, not severed cleanly, not burning with pain. It felt restrained, as if something had been forced inward rather than broken. That unsettled her more than grief. They had called her blood cursed for as long as she could remember. She had learned to move carefully, to soften her presence, to accept scrutiny as the price of being allowed to remain. Even love, when it came, had arrived cautiously, measured, conditional, until it hadn't been enough. She walked until night fell fully, until the forest shifted from familiar patrol routes to wild, unclaimed ground. The boundary stones were far behind her now, swallowed by darkness. Cold crept into her limbs, exhaustion finally catching up as her steps slowed. She sensed it before she heard it. A presence, vast, controlled, distant, pressing against the edges of her awareness like a tide held back by will alone. Not pack dominance, something older, sharper. Her breath hitched. The Alpha King. She had never seen him up close, only from afar, during rare gatherings when his presence bent the space around him and wolves lowered their heads without being told. He ruled more than a pack. He ruled consequence. She froze instinctively, heart hammering as the forest ahead stilled unnaturally. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating a figure standing in the path she had been following. Tall, broad-shouldered, cloaked in restraint rather than ornament. His gaze landed on her, not accusing, not dismissive, assessing. "You were sent away," he said calmly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she replied, forcing steadiness into her voice. "For what reason?" Her jaw tightened. "Cursed blood." Something flickered in his eyes then, interest sharpened by disbelief. "By whose assessment?" he asked. "The Council's," she said. "Ratified by the Alpha." His gaze darkened. "Not by me." The words struck harder than she expected. She lifted her chin. "It doesn't matter. The decision stands." "Does it?" he asked quietly. She felt the pressure of his presence intensify, not threatening, but probing. Her blood reacted instantly, warmth blooming beneath her skin. Her heartbeat shifting into a rhythm that felt recognized. She staggered slightly, breath catching. The Alpha King noticed. "You're reacting," he said, "not in fear." "I always do," she replied quickly. "That's why they—" "No," he interrupted. "That's not fear." His gaze sharpened, senses clearly extending beyond what he allowed most wolves to witness. The forest seemed to lean inward, listening. "What are you?" he murmured. The question sent a shiver down her spine. She clenched her fists. "I'm the mistake they couldn't classify." He stepped closer, not invading her space, but close enough that the air between them felt charged. Her blood hummed, not violently, not erratically, steady, focused, alive. "Cursed blood doesn't stabilize under scrutiny," he said slowly. "It fractures." Her breath trembled. "Then why does mine feel like it's waking up?" His eyes lifted to meet hers fully then, something dangerous and intent settling behind them. "Because," he said quietly, "someone buried the truth." A distant howl echoed, faint, hesitant, pack scouts searching, perhaps, or elders second-guessing their certainty. The Alpha King did not turn toward the sound. "Come with me," he said. Her chest tightened. "To what end?" "To find out why your blood unsettles systems built on lies," he replied. and why your rejection was approved so quickly by people who never once tested it properly. Fear flared then, not of him, but of what he might uncover. If you're wrong, she said, I lose nothing. I'm already exiled. And if I'm right, he countered, they lose control. Silence stretched between them, thick and irrevocable. She thought of the circle. The whispers, the word cursed used like a blade. She nodded once. The Alpha King turned, leading her deeper into the forest, away from pack law, towards something far older and far less forgiving. Behind them, the path closed. Ahead, truth waited. They moved in silence beneath the thinning canopy, moonlight filtering through branches like fractured silver. The Alpha King did not rush. He did not watch the path for threats. His attention remained attuned to something subtler, her. She felt it in the way the air shifted when she stepped too close, in the way her blood responded when his presence aligned with hers. Not heat, not pull, recognition, steady and unsettling. You've lived with this your whole life, he said at last. With being watched? She replied bitterly. Yes. With being misnamed, he corrected. She faltered mid-step. What does that even mean? He slowed, allowing her to catch up, then continued at a measured pace. Curses fracture bloodlines. They destabilize bonds. They spread. Yours did none of that. They said it did, she said. They said what they needed to justify fear, he replied. Not what they verified. Her chest tightened. You're saying the council lied? I'm saying they never looked closely, he answered, because some truths threaten the structures they rely on. They emerged into a narrow glade encircled by ancient stone markers, weathered, half sunk into the earth. No sigils marked them. No pack symbols claimed them. This place predates the councils, he said, before bloodlines were ranked, before pure meant obedient. She felt it immediately, the way her heartbeat shifted, how the pressure in her chest eased instead of tightening. The bond within her stirred, not aching, not pulling, listening. What is this place? She asked softly. A proving ground, he replied. For blood the packs don't understand. Her breath caught. You've brought others here? Yes, he said. Very few survived the truth. Fear slid cold through her veins. Survived? Not all truths are meant to be carried, he said honestly, but all deserve to be seen. He stepped into the center of the glade and turned to face her. Stand there. She hesitated, then obeyed, boots pressing into soil that felt warm despite the chill. The moment she settled, the stones around the glade hummed faintly, as if acknowledging her presence. The sensation rippled through her, blood warming, breath steadying. Senses sharpening with clarity that bordered on painful. She gasped. What's happening? Your blood is answering, he said. Not to me, to the land. Her wolf surged forward instinctively, not defensive, not aggressive, present. She felt taller suddenly, more grounded, as if something long compressed had finally been given space to expand. This isn't a curse, she whispered. No, he agreed. It's a lineage they buried. The stones flared softly, ancient patterns shimmering to life, subtle, restrained, unmistakably deliberate. Her blood thrummed in response, not erratic, not wild, stable, controlled, powerful. The Alpha King watched with undisguised focus, Your blood stabilizes under scrutiny, he said. It doesn't fracture, it anchors. Her knees nearly buckled. Then why call it cursed? Because blood like yours doesn't obey hierarchy, he replied. It exposes it. A distant crack echoed through the forest, branches snapping, hurried footsteps approaching. Pack scouts. They followed us, she said, dread tightening her throat. Yes, he replied calmly, and they'll see what they never intended to. The stones hummed louder, the glade responding not with aggression, but resistance. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Figures emerged from the trees, elders first, then guards, their expressions shifting from confidence to confusion as they took in the scene. The Alpha King turned to face them fully, authority radiating without effort. You condemned blood you never tested, he said evenly. You called it cursed because you didn't know how to control it. An elder stepped forward, staff trembling. This is forbidden ground, which is why you never looked, the Alpha King replied, and why you were wrong. The elder's gaze snapped to her, eyes widening as the stones flared brighter. Impossible. Her voice trembled, but did not break. You were afraid of what I represented. The Alpha King's gaze hardened. And you used superstition as law. Silence fell, heavy and irrevocable. The truth had surfaced, and it would not sink back into the ground quietly. The elders did not advance. They stood at the edge of the glade, as if the ground itself had drawn a line they were afraid to cross. Torches flickered uncertainly in their hands, flames bending away from the ancient stones that hummed steadily around her. She felt it then, the difference between authority and legitimacy. Her blood no longer reacted to their presence with anxiety or restraint. It held steady, warm, and responsive, as if it had finally found a rhythm it recognized. Her wolf lifted its head fully inside her, not cowering, not snarling, watching. This is manipulation, one of the elders said, voice tight. Old magic responding to provocation. The Alpha King's gaze cut to him, sharp and unyielding. Then explain why it doesn't respond to you. The elder stiffened, opening his mouth, then closing it again as the stones remained inert beneath his feet. Another stepped forward, fear edging her composure. Blood that destabilizes order has always been defined as cursed, the Alpha King finished. Yes, I've read the records you sealed. A ripple of unease spread through the group. You had no authority, an elder began. I have all authority when truth is buried to preserve comfort, the Alpha King said coldly. She felt his attention shift back to her, not possessive, not claiming, expectant. Do you feel it? He asked quietly. She nodded. It's calm. That's because your blood isn't reacting to dominance, he said. It's responding to alignment. Her breath hitched as understanding settled into her bones. You marked it as cursed because it couldn't be bent, she said, voice steady despite the weight of realization. Because it didn't submit cleanly. Murmurs broke out among the elders. That's speculation, one snapped. The Alpha King raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. Then let the land answer. He stepped aside, gesturing for the nearest elder to enter the glade. The man hesitated, then forced himself forward, boots pressing into the soil. For a heartbeat nothing happened. Then the pressure hit. The elder gasped, staggering as the ground resisted him, the stones pulsing once in sharp rejection. He dropped to one knee, staff clattering from numb fingers. "This place doesn't respond to hierarchy," the Alpha King said evenly. "Only truth." The elder scrambled back out of the glade, pale and shaken. Her chest tightened, not with triumph, but grief. "All this time," she said softly, "you knew something was wrong." "No," the first elder said hoarsely. "We knew something was different." "And you chose fear," she replied. A sharp crack echoed as one of the stones flared brighter, light threading through ancient markings that had not awakened in generations. The Alpha King's gaze sharpened. "Your bloodline predates pack law," he said. "It was meant to balance authority, not obey it." Her knees trembled. "Then why was I rejected?" "Because your mate's bond activated that lineage," the Alpha King said, "and it threatened the structure he was being groomed to inherit." Her heart lurched. He knew. "Enough to be afraid," the Alpha King replied. "Not enough to be honest." Anger flared then, hot, sharp, but it did not destabilize her. It passed through her like fire, through tempered steel. "I was never cursed," she whispered. "No," the Alpha King said. "You were inconvenient." A sound tore from her throat, half laugh, half sob, as the weight of it hit her fully. Years of scrutiny, of self-doubt, of shrinking to survive, all built on a lie. The pack scouts shifted uneasily, uncertainty bleeding into their posture as they looked between her and the elders. The story they had been told was unraveling. "You exiled her," a younger guard said hesitantly. "For this?" Silence answered. The Alpha King stepped forward, voice carrying clearly through the glade. "Her blood stabilizes power rather than concentrating it, which means it threatens any system built on hoarding control." He turned to her. "This is why the truth was buried." The stones hummed again, softer this time, not reacting to conflict, but acknowledging revelation. She drew a steady breath, grounding herself in the sensation. "What happens now?" The Alpha King met her gaze. "Now they decide whether they correct the lie or double down on it." An elder straightened slowly, jaw tight. "If we acknowledge this," he said, "it undermines decades of law." "Yes," the Alpha King replied. "That's what truth does." The elder's eyes flicked to her, fear and calculation warring in his expression. "And what of her?" The Alpha King did not answer for her. She stepped forward instead, into the center of the glade, light tracing the outline of her form, without spectacle or force. "I won't return quietly," she said. "And I won't be hidden again so you can preserve comfort." The ground held. "If you want peace," she continued, "you start by admitting what you did." The elders exchanged glances, some defiant, some shaken, some quietly afraid. The Alpha King watched them with cold patience. "Choose carefully," he said, "because blood remembers." The forest seemed to lean inward, waiting. The elders did not answer immediately. They stood in a fractured line at the edge of the glade. Authority splintering under the weight of a truth they could no longer dismiss. Torches burned low, flames guttering as if the fire itself resisted bearing witness to what had been uncovered. She felt the shift before anyone spoke. Not triumph, not vindication, pressure. the kind that comes when lies finally lose the ground beneath them. An elder with iron-grey hair straightened, voice measured but tight. "If what you claim is true," he said to the Alpha King, "then this bloodline threatens the balance we've maintained for generations." "Then your balance was never stable," the Alpha King replied coolly. "It was merely unchallenged." Murmurs rippled through the scouts and guards. Some looked to the elders for reassurance. Others, quietly, instinctively, looked to her. She felt it and stiffened. "I won't replace one authority with another," she said immediately. "I didn't survive exile to become a symbol you can reshape." The Alpha King's gaze flicked to her, not in warning, not in command, in approval. "You hear that?" he asked the elders. "That's what you feared." One elder scoffed. "You expect us to dismantle our laws because a single wolf claims, because the land confirms," the Alpha King interrupted. He gestured toward the glade. "Step inside," he said. "All of you, or admit you never intended to learn the truth." Silence stretched, taut and dangerous. At last, one elder moved, a woman whose gaze had lingered on her since the beginning, not with cruelty, but with something closer to regret. She stepped forward carefully, boots crossing the threshold of the stones. The ground trembled faintly. Not rejection, inquiry. The woman gasped softly, eyes widening. "It's steady," she whispered. "It's not pushing me out." The Alpha King's voice was calm. "Because you aren't trying to dominate it." The woman turned slowly toward her, something breaking open in her expression. "They told us your blood would corrupt the land." "They told you what preserved their control," she replied quietly. Another elder followed, then another. Some were repelled immediately, stumbling back with sharp breaths and shaking hands. Others were allowed passage, the stones reacting with subtle resistance or acceptance based not on rank, but intent. The division was unmistakable. "You see now," the Alpha King said, "this bloodline doesn't obey hierarchy, it reveals it." Her mate's voice cut sharply through the glade. "Enough." He emerged from the tree line, face pale with fury and disbelief, eyes fixed on her as if she had become something foreign. His dominance surged reflexively, then shattered against the glade's resistance. He staggered. "This is madness," he snarled. "You're letting her dismantle everything." She met his gaze without flinching. "I didn't dismantle it. I survived it." "You were dangerous," he insisted. "Unpredictable." "Because I didn't disappear quietly," she said. The Alpha King turned his cold gaze on him. "You rejected her not because of risk," he said, "but because her bloodline destabilized your inheritance." Her mate's jaw clenched. "You don't know that." "I read your grooming records," the Alpha King replied. "Your ascension depended on uninterrupted consolidation. Her presence interfered." The truth hit like a blade. Her mate's expression cracked, not into remorse, but exposure. "I did what I had to," he said hoarsely. "You did what was easiest," she replied. The bond stirred faintly, not in longing, not in pain, recognition, without attachment. "I loved you," she said quietly, "but you loved control more." The glade held its breath. Her mate looked away first. An elder dropped his staff, the sound echoing sharply. "We were wrong," he whispered, "and we made her pay for it." The admission rippled outward, destabilizing what little authority remained intact. The Alpha King stepped forward, voice carrying with finality. "You exiled a stabilizing bloodline and called it curse. That lie ends tonight." He turned to her, not to command, not to elevate, to acknowledge. "What do you want?" he asked. The question landed heavy. She inhaled slowly, feeling her blood settle, not flaring, not demanding, grounded. "I won't return to a pack that tried to erase me," she said, "and I won't be hidden again to make you comfortable." The elders listened now, truly listened. "But I won't seek revenge," she continued. "What I want is truth, spoken publicly, recorded honestly, and never buried again." Silence followed. Then the land hummed softly. Acceptance. The Alpha King inclined his head. "So it will be done." Her mate stared at her, something like grief finally surfacing beneath his fear. "You're changing everything." She met his gaze calmly. "No, I'm letting it change." The glade began to dim, stones settling back into stillness. Not because the truth had ended, but because it had been witnessed. The elders withdrew slowly, shaken and divided, carrying a reckoning they could not undo. She remained standing in the center of the glade, breath steady, spine straight. For the first time in her life, her blood was not feared. It was understood. The glade emptied slowly, not in retreat, not in resolution, but in fracture. Elders withdrew in small, uneven groups, their authority no longer moving as one body. Some avoided her gaze. Others looked at her with something raw and unsettled, as if the ground had shifted beneath everything they believed secure. Her mate lingered. He stood at the edge of the stones, hands clenched, eyes tracking her movements, as if trying to reconcile the woman he had rejected with the force now standing in front of him. His dominance no longer pressed outward. It folded inward on itself, unstable and uncertain. "You didn't have to expose this," he said finally. "You could have let it fade." She turned to face him fully. "You didn't let me fade. You erased me." He flinched. "I protected the pack." "You protected your ascent," she replied, "and you called it duty, so you wouldn't have to admit the cost." The bond stirred faintly between them, not aching, not pulling, a quiet echo of what had been, stripped of illusion. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, voice low. "The councils will fracture. Alliances will destabilize. There will be consequences." She nodded once. "There already were. I lived them." Silence stretched between them, heavy and unavoidable. "I loved you," he said at last. She believed him. That was the most painful part. "And I loved the version of you that didn't exist," she replied. "The one who would have chosen truth over control." His gaze dropped. "If I had, you didn't," she said gently, "and that matters." The bond pulsed once, softly, and then stilled. Not broken, resolved. He exhaled shakily, shoulders sagging as if something he'd been holding upright for years finally collapsed. "They'll never forgive this." "I'm not asking them to," she replied. "I'm asking them to remember it." He looked up at her, eyes searching. "And you? Where do you go now?" She hadn't answered that question for herself yet. Before she could speak, the Alpha King stepped closer, not intruding, not positioning himself between them, present. "She doesn't go anywhere you can follow," he said calmly. Her mate stiffened. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns the realm," the Alpha King replied. "And you've already lost your claim to her story." Her mate's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. After a long moment, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest without looking back. She released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The glade felt quieter now, not emptied, but settled. The stones no longer hummed with tension. They rested, as if their role in the night's reckoning was complete. "You didn't hesitate," the Alpha King said quietly. She glanced at him. "About what?" "About refusing him," he clarified. "Even when it cost you everything you were taught to value." She considered the question. "I hesitated for years," she said. "Just not tonight." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Your blood stabilized under pressure," he said. "Most don't." "Neither did yours," she replied. A faint curve touched his mouth, brief, restrained. "That's why I recognized it." They moved away from the glade as the moon dipped lower, walking without urgency through forest paths that no longer felt hostile or uncertain. Her senses felt sharper now, not overwhelmed, not restrained, aligned. "Your bloodline," he said as they walked, "was designed to counterbalance concentrated authority, not overthrow it, not obey it." She absorbed the words slowly. "So what happens when it's acknowledged?" "Then power has to answer to consequence," he replied. "And truth stops being optional." They reached a rise overlooking the valley beyond pack borders. Dawn was beginning to thin the sky, pale light creeping along the horizon. "You could disappear," the Alpha King said. "Leave them to deal with the fracture." She shook her head. "Then they'll rewrite it." "Yes," he agreed. "They always do." She stared out at the waking land, feeling the steadiness of her blood, the quiet presence of her wolf, the absence of fear where it once lived. "I won't disappear," she said. "But I won't rule either." The Alpha King inclined his head slightly. "That may be the most dangerous choice." She met his gaze. Truth doesn't need a throne. Silence settled between them, comfortable, mutual. From below, distant howls rose, not commands, not alarms, questions. She felt them ripple through the land, through the fracture she had revealed. "They're going to come looking," she said. "Yes," the Alpha King replied. "Not all to challenge you, some to understand." She drew a steady breath. "Then I'll stand where they can see me." He watched her with quiet intensity. "You won't stand alone." She nodded. "I know." The sun crested the horizon fully, light spilling across the valley, illuminating paths that had been hidden in shadow only hours before. The lie had been exposed. Now the truth would have to live. The realm did not change all at once. It shifted in increments, quiet, deliberate fractures spreading through structures that had relied on silence to hold their shape. By the second night, word had reached beyond the eastern packs. By the third, messengers moved along old routes with new caution, carrying truths they could not soften without losing credibility. She felt it in the land. Not upheaval, reorientation. They had taken shelter in a high valley beyond pack borders where the air ran clean and the ground answered to no sigil or banner. The Alpha King had chosen it carefully, not as refuge, as vantage. Wolves arrived in pairs and small groups, never all at once. Some came openly, heads high but eyes guarded. Others lingered at the valley's edge, scenting the air as if unsure they were allowed to approach. She did not call to them. She waited. The first to speak was a healer from the southern reaches, an older woman with hands stained by herbs and a gaze sharpened by years of watching wolves break under rules that never served them. "They told us your blood was unstable," the healer said quietly, "that it caused fractures in the bond." "It reveals fractures," she replied. "It doesn't create them." The healer nodded slowly. "That explains much." A younger alpha followed, one not yet seated, ambition held back by doubt. "If your bloodline balances authority," he said cautiously, "then the councils will move to control it." "They already tried," she replied. "And failed," the Alpha King added evenly. The Alpha swallowed, gaze flicking to the king before returning to her. "What happens if they try again?" She met his eyes. "Then they have to do it publicly." Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Not fear, calculation. That was when she understood what the bloodline truly did. It forced accountability. The Alpha King watched the exchange without interference, his presence steady and deliberate. When he finally spoke, the valley quieted instantly. "You are not here to pledge," he said. "You are here to witness." He turned to her, not to command, not to elevate. "Speak," he said. The word landed with weight, but not pressure. She drew a steady breath. "I won't lead you," she said clearly. "And I won't shield you from consequence." A ripple of surprise passed through the group. "What I offer," she continued, "is truth without permission. If you come near me, you accept that your authority will be questioned, and that you may not like the answers." Silence held. Then the healer bowed her head, not kneeling, not submitting, acknowledging. "That," she said softly, "is worth standing near." One by one, others inclined their heads, not in allegiance, but agreement. Some turned away afterward, leaving with new understanding rather than certainty. That night, the Alpha King stood with her at the valley's edge, moonlight washing the stone pale and honest. "They're adapting," he said. "Yes," she replied, "some faster than others." "They'll test you," he continued. "Push for boundaries. Try to shape this into something familiar." She nodded. "They always do." "And you?" he asked. "What will you do when they try to crown you without a crown?" She considered the question carefully. "I'll refuse it." His gaze sharpened. "That won't stop them from trying." "I know," she said, "but it will force them to ask why." A faint, restrained smile touched his mouth. "You're destabilizing the realm without raising your voice." "I'm just not lowering it," she replied. The bond stirred faintly at that, not pulling toward him, not reacting to proximity. Settled, certain. He noticed. "The bond has quieted." "Yes," she said. "It's no longer searching." "For what?" "For permission," she replied. They stood in silence for a long moment, the valley breathing around them. "You could take a seat," the Alpha King said quietly. "Claim formal authority. Shape what comes next." She turned to face him fully. "Would you follow me if I did?" A pause. "No," he said honestly. She nodded. "Then I won't become what you wouldn't trust." Recognition flickered between them. Mutual. Unclaimed. Below them, wolves gathered around small fires, speaking in low voices, testing ideas that had once been forbidden. No orders were given. No lines were drawn. The realm was learning how to stand without leaning. She felt it settle into her bones, not as burden, but as alignment. The blood they called cursed had done what it was always meant to do. It told the truth, and refused to disappear. Dawn rose slowly over the valley, pale light spilling across stone and frost without urgency or spectacle. The wolves did not stir all at once. They woke in stages, quiet conversations fading, fires burning low, bodies stretching stiffly as the cold eased its grip. No horns sounded, no orders were given, and yet movement began, purposeful and unforced. She stood at the valley's edge, watching it happen. For the first time in her life, the world did not feel like something she had to brace against. Behind her, the Alpha King approached, not announcing himself, not crowding her space. His presence settled beside her like a constant she no longer needed to measure herself against. "They'll remember this place," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "even if they try to forget why." The valley below was already changing. Wolves who had arrived uncertain now spoke openly, questions moving through them like current through water. Not rebellion, recalibration. "They'll say this was your doing," he continued, "that you disrupted order." She exhaled slowly. Order that requires silence deserves disruption. He studied her, something like respect sharpening in his gaze. "You never asked for protection." "I was tired of mistaking it for permission," she said. The mark at her wrist pulsed faintly, not glowing, not demanding attention. Witnessing. It no longer felt like something to explain or defend. A messenger approached hesitantly, a young scout from a neighboring pack, eyes wide with the weight of what he carried. He stopped several paces away, unsure how to address her. "Speak," she said gently. "The councils are convening," he reported. "They're arguing whether to retract the curse designation, officially." She nodded once. "And unofficially?" "They're afraid," he admitted. "Good," she said calmly. "Fear means they're listening." The scout hesitated. "They want to know what you'll do if they don't." She met his gaze steadily. "Nothing." He blinked. "Nothing?" "I won't chase recognition," she replied, "and I won't negotiate truth." Understanding flickered across his face. He bowed his head, not in submission, but acknowledgement, and withdrew. The Alpha King watched him go. "That unsettles them more than threats." "It should," she said. "Truth doesn't bargain." They stood together in the quiet that followed, the valley breathing evenly beneath the rising sun. "I won't return to a pack," she said after a moment. "Not now. Not later." "I didn't expect you to," he replied. "But I won't disappear either," she added. They'll see me. They'll have to. He inclined his head. You'll become a reference point. Yes, she said. Not a ruler. A faint smile touched his mouth, brief, restrained, the most dangerous kind. Below them, a group of wolves began to depart, not fleeing, not retreating, carrying something new back into territories that had never learned how to hold it. She felt the shift ripple outward, subtle but irreversible. Her mate's pack would rewrite their story. Others would deny it ever happened. Some would call her a threat. Let them. She had lived as a lie long enough. The Alpha King turned to her fully then. You know they'll try to bind this to prophecy. Of course, she replied. They always do when they don't want to admit they were wrong. And you? She considered the question carefully. I'll let them tell their stories, she said, and I'll keep living the truth where they can't erase it. Silence settled again, not empty, not tense. Aligned. The Alpha King shifted slightly, as if preparing to leave. I won't stand in your shadow, he said, and I won't ask you to stand in mine. She met his gaze, something steady and unspoken passing between them. Walk beside me, she said simply, as long as it makes sense. He inclined his head. Not a bow, not a claim. Agreement. They turned together, walking down into the valley, not leading, not following, just present. The realm would adapt or fracture. Power would reorganize or resist. Lies would surface and crumble in their own time. Her blood did not burn, it did not strain, it held. And the truth the world had tried to bury would no longer sleep quietly beneath fear. Rejected for blood they dared not understand. She did not rise to rule. She stood where truth could no longer be hidden. And the Alpha King finally saw what the world had been too afraid to name.